Okay, so NASCAR's penalty report just came out, and just as we expected, Sammy Smith was penalized for the BS he did at Martinsville. $25,000 fine, 50 driver points. This penalty effectively drops him all the way from 51 above the cut line down to just 1 point above. Now, this is a really harsh penalty in my opinion, because if you go by the precedent that was set with Austin Dillon at Richmond, his penalty was only 25 points and he was stripped of his playoff eligibility, as in they let him keep the win, but it wouldn't lock him into the playoffs. Of course, the difference is that Sammy didn't even win a race, instead deciding to become a wrecking ball at the end of that race, but my point still stands. 50 points is a little too harsh in my opinion, especially when he didn't even right hook Taylor Gray. He just dumped him after sending it from, I don't know, 2 to 3 car lengths behind, which is still an egregious move, don't get me wrong, but the main reason why NASCAR penalized Austin Dillon for the Richmond thing, and this is according to NASCAR themselves by the way, it was because of the right hook on Hamlin after he dumped Logano. Again, I feel like if Austin Dillon dumped Logano and left it at that, I don't think NASCAR would have penalized him. They only did what they did because of the right hook on the 11 that happened immediately afterwards. Now, of course, NASCAR has changed the rules since then because they don't want boys have added to be a thing anymore. So it makes sense why the penalty will be much more severe than it was before, especially with the racing we have seen as of late in Xfinity, where there is just no respect between drivers. That being said, NASCAR needs to do a better job at handing out these penalties in the moment, instead of having us wait until midweek to find out just for 90% of the fan base to disagree with the decision for X or Y reason. Because, yes, while I think this penalty was a little too harsh, and a part of me feels that this is NASCAR overcorrecting and overcompensating for having missed it in the moment, Sammy Smith still deserved to be penalized. And if I was race control, what I would have done is, I would have dropped him to last car on the lead lap for that move. The same penalty you give someone for going below the double yellow line on the last lap at Daytona or Talladega, that's what I would have done to Sammy Smith. But this leads us into another topic, because with the lack of respect from drivers, particularly the younger ones in the trucks and now Xfinity series, this has raised the question of what can NASCAR do to keep these young drivers in check. And the two biggest answers that were circulating in regards to this that I agree with were, number one, get rid of the restrictions on Cup drivers so they can run as many Xfinity and truck races as they wish, and two, go back to full season points for Xfinity and trucks and keep the playoffs for the Cup Series only. And personally, these two solutions would not bother me in the slightest. I've said it for years that my enjoyment of a race does not depend on the drivers that are on the field, because back in the day, if I saw Kyle Busch or Kevin Harvick or Carl Edwards or Joe Logano or Denny Hamlin or Brad Keselowski in an Xfinity race, that would not turn me away from watching. I would actually be intrigued to see which young drivers step up to challenge them on that particular race. Now, of course, there's a reason why those restrictions were put in place, and it's because those same drivers I mentioned, they took it to an extreme by showing up for about 80 to 90% of the races, which to some degree I understand, but again, that being said, NASCAR had already implemented that you can only run for points in one of the 3 National Series rule back in 2011. Long before they started limiting Cup drivers. And this was to allow for the series regulars to have a natural shot at the title. So it's not like Cup drivers could just start every race in Xfinity and win the title like before anymore, because they can no longer gain driver points in that series. So in that sense, they were already restricted. All in all, however, what I would love for more Cup drivers to race in trucks in Xfinity, if only to give those young guns that veteran guidance they desperately need. I don't think NASCAR will go away from that anytime soon. And a part of me also wouldn't want that to happen, because I just know those annoying ass fans that hate Cup leeches will make a return and start beating a dead horse about it again. And it's gonna be so frustrating watching those same tweets pop up on my feed. So yeah, no thanks to that. Well, how about getting rid of the playoff format then? I know NASCAR won't do anything that drastic for the Cup Series anytime soon, but what about trucks and Xfinity? Because back during the Chase era from 2004 to 2015, the Cup Series, they had the postseason, but Xfinity and trucks, they still went at it in a full season format. And the reason I'm bringing this up as well is because of Sammy Smith's post-race interview, where he said he didn't want to do it, but he felt he absolutely had to. And that's because in today's points format, winning means literally everything. Like, there's no big picture like there was back in the Winston Cup days. Drivers are more willing to go for broke because they see the potential reward, which is a win and automatic playoff berth, more than worth the risk of losing out on a still good top 5, top 10 finish. But it's still a finish that it doesn't lock you into the playoffs, or it doesn't move the needle that much in today's format. So they're willing to risk it all, wreck their car or somebody else's, and getting tons of scrutiny for their actions. And the worst part is, these young drivers are more than willing to not just live with the consequences of their actions, but double down on them instead of using them as a learning experience. Look at Carson Hocevar, for example. Every time he gets into an incident with another guy, he always goes, "I'm gonna change, I promise," every single time, only to go back to his old habits a couple of months later like nothing had changed. And I like Carson Hocevar, but this is a valid criticism that people, myself included, have of him. And this mindset is a direct result of the playoff format bringing out the worst in some drivers, especially those younger drivers who never got a chance to race full time without the playoffs. And because of this, a part of me believes NASCAR will be more lenient to switching it up for those two series because, well, they are national touring series. Xfinity and Trucks are not the premier series like the Cup Series is. So I do believe, especially with what we have seen in recent years, that NASCAR will be willing to, at the very least, I'm not saying they will outright go through with it, but I think they would at the very least consider switching it up with the Xfinity and Truck Series and bringing back a full season format without any playoffs, even if it's just to see how the on-track respect would change, because a lot of people, myself included, are starting to point fingers at the current format for encouraging stuff like what we saw on Saturday. But yeah, whether it's allowing Cup drivers to race more Xfinity or Truck races or removing the playoffs from both series altogether, something's gonna change, because I really doubt a harsh penalty will discourage these young guns from doing this nonsense again if the opportunity presents itself.